First contact reversed. The massive silhouette of the TSS Artemis cut through the starlit void, its crystalline sensor arrays catching distant starlight like facets of a diamond. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the bridge's observation deck, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched the endless stream of data flowing across the holographic displays. Humanity had come far in the centuries since their first tentative steps into space. Now their ships were among the most advanced in known space, their civilization spanning hundreds of worlds. Admiral called Lieutenant Rivera from his station, his augmented eyes glowing softly as they processed the incoming sensor data. We're picking up unusual energy signatures from the third planet of the Epsilon system. They're primitive, but definitely artificial. Chen's expression remained neutral, but her heart rate quickened. In 3 decades of exploration, she'd never encountered a genuinely primitive civilization. Most species they met were either post-singular or had already achieved faster-than-light travel. "Show me," she commanded. The main display crystallized into a view of a blue-green world, not unlike ancient Earth. Scattered across its surface were the telltale signs of an industrial civilization. Cities glowing in the night, networks of ground transportation, and the first tentative attempts at space stations in low orbit. But what caught Chen's attention were the massive geometric structures that dotted the planet's equator, constructions that defied conventional engineering. "Life signs?" she asked, already knowing the answer but following protocol. "Confirmed," Rivera responded. "Approximately 4 billion sentients. Bipedal, though their biological makeup is fascinating. They appear to have a silicon-based cellular structure rather than carbon." Chen allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had theorized about silicon-based life for centuries, but this was the first confirmed discovery. "What's their technological level?" Commander Patel, her xenoanthropology expert, stepped forward. "Early space age, Admiral. Similar to humanity circa 2050 CE. They've achieved limited spaceflight, but haven't cracked FTL. Their energy generation appears to be primarily fusion-based, though those equatorial structures." She paused, frowning. "They're like nothing we've ever seen." The irony wasn't lost on Chen. Less than 3 centuries ago, humanity had been in a similar position, looking up at the stars, dreaming of reaching them, while more advanced civilizations debated their fate. Now the roles were reversed. "Begin first contact protocols," Chen ordered, but her tactical officer, Colonel Zhang, interrupted. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple ships entering the system. Signs match Nexus Concordat vessels." Zhang's typically steady voice carried an edge of concern. Chen's jaw tightened. The Concordat, an alliance of aggressive spacefaring species that saw primitive civilizations as resources to be exploited rather than potential allies. They had clashed with Earth's forces before, but never over something this significant. "How many?" 3 dreadnoughts, support fleet of approximately 20 vessels. They'll be in range of the planet in 48 hours. Chen turned to face her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Humanity remembered its own history. The centuries of struggle, the near extinctions, the hard-won victories that had forged them into what they were today. They remembered what it was like to be vulnerable, to look up at the stars and wonder if they were alone. "Send word to Fleet Command," she ordered. "Request immediate reinforcement, and begin preparations for defensive positions around the planet. The Concordat outnumbers us 3-1, Zhang reminded her. Chen's smile was wolf-like. "Then it's almost a fair fight. Humanity spent centuries being underestimated by more advanced civilizations. We learned from that experience, both what to do and what not to do." She turned back to the view of the planet, watching as its inhabitants went about their lives, unaware that their destiny hung in the balance. The bridge crew returned to their stations with renewed purpose. In the centuries since humanity had reached the stars, they had built something unprecedented. A civilization that remembered its roots, that understood the responsibility that came with power. They had sworn that when they found others climbing that same difficult path, they would do what no one had done for them. They would extend a helping hand. As the Artemis moved into position, Chen initiated a ship-wide broadcast. All hands, this is the Admiral. Today we face a choice that will echo through history. We can stand aside and allow another species to suffer what we once suffered, or we can stand firm and show the galaxy that humanity has learned from its past. I know which choice I'm making. Battle stations. The great ship's engines flared to life, and across the fleet, humanity prepared to defend a species that didn't even know they existed. The next 48 hours would determine not just the fate of this newfound civilization, but what kind of guardians humanity would choose to be in a galaxy that still hadn't learned the value of compassion over conquest. The Guardian Protocol. The emergency council chamber aboard the TSS Artemis hummed with tense energy as holographic representatives from Earth's Defense Council materialized around the circular table. Admiral Chen stood at attention, her formal uniform gleaming under the artificial lights as she faced the stern faces of humanity's highest military command. "You're proposing to invoke the Guardian Protocol," Council Director Marcus Thane stated, his holographic form flickering slightly. "You understand the implications of this decision, Admiral." Chen's voice remained steady. "I do, Director. In 40 hours, the Nexus Concordat will arrive with enough firepower to subjugate an entire civilization. These silicon-based beings, we're calling them the Epsilon Architects, due to their remarkable structures, have no means to defend themselves. The Guardian Protocol has never been activated," Admiral Santos interjected, her Sao Paulo office visible behind her projection. "It was established after the Proxima crisis as a final resort. Using it here could trigger a full-scale war with the Concordat." Chen activated a holographic display, showing the massive geometric structures that had first caught their attention. "Look at what they've built. These aren't just buildings, they're quantum probability manipulators, crude by our standards, but the theoretical understanding required. These people have potential beyond anything we've seen." The chamber fell silent as new data streamed in from the observation drones. The Epsilon Architects moved with graceful purpose through their cities, their crystalline bodies refracting sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. Their young gathered in learning centers where they manipulated small-scale versions of their probability engines, pushing the boundaries of what their current technology allowed. "They remind me of us," Chen continued, her voice soft but carrying weight. "Not physically, but in spirit. The drive to understand, to build, to reach beyond their grasp. The Concordat would destroy that. They'd strip mine the probability engines and reduce these people to slaves in their own minds." Director Thane leaned forward, his holographic hands clasped. "The Guardian Protocol would commit us to their defense and development, not just against the Concordat, but any future threats. We would be responsible for shepherding their growth while preventing cultural contamination. It's an enormous commitment of resources. Humanity once stood where they stand," Chen replied, thinking of the ancient historical records she'd studied throughout her career. "Looking up at the stars, filled with potential, vulnerable to any advanced civilization that happened to find us. We survived through luck and determination. They deserve the same chance." The council members exchanged glances. They all knew the histories, the close calls, the near extinctions, the hard lessons learned as humanity clawed its way to the stars. They had sworn to be better than those who had come before. "There's something else," Commander Patel spoke up from her station. "We've detected quantum entanglement signatures in their communication networks. Their probability engines aren't just architectural achievements. They're the beginning of a civilization-wide quantum consciousness. If given time to develop naturally, they could revolutionize our understanding of quantum mechanics," finished Council Scientist Dr. Zhang, her eyes widening. "Their silicon-based biology, combined with their quantum technology, the scientific implications are staggering." The council chamber erupted in hushed discussions. Chen waited, knowing that humanity's response here would define them for generations to come. They had built their interstellar civilization on principles of protection and advancement, turning away from the exploitation they'd witnessed in others. The Concordat will demand an explanation, Santos warned. They'll claim we're violating the Non-Interference Treaty of 2287. The treaty has provisions for protecting developing civilizations from exploitation, Chen countered. We're not interfering. We're preventing interference. There's a difference. Director Thane rose, his holographic form towering over the chamber. Admiral Chen, your service record speaks of someone who understands both power and restraint. If we activate the Guardian Protocol, the defense of the Epsilon civilization will fall primarily to your fleet. Are you prepared for that responsibility? Chen thought of Earth's own history, of the countless civilizations that had risen and fallen, of the species that had never gotten the chance to reach their potential. Humanity survived because we never stopped reaching for the stars. Even when it seemed impossible, we owe them the same chance we wished someone had given us. The council members nodded one by one, their decisions made. Director Thane's voice carried the weight of historical significance. By unanimous decision of the Earth Defense Council, the Guardian Protocol is hereby activated. Admiral Chen, you are authorized to take all necessary measures to protect the Epsilon civilization. As the council members winked out of existence, Chen turned to her crew. Send word to the fleet. All ships to battle stations. Deploy the quantum camouflage fields. We go dark in 10 minutes. She paused, looking at the beautiful world on their main screen, and prepare a first contact package, to be delivered only if absolutely necessary. We're their guardians now, not their conquerors. The TSS Artemis and its support fleet began moving into defensive positions, their advanced stealth systems making them virtually invisible to conventional sensors. In 36 hours, the Concordat would arrive, expecting to find a helpless primitive civilization. Instead, they would face the full might of a humanity that had sworn to protect the very thing they had once been. A young species full of promise, reaching for the stars. Legacy of the stars. The Concordat fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a pride of predators, their obsidian ships reflecting the light of Epsilon's sun. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the cloaked TSS Artemis as 23 warships took up aggressive positions around the planet. The Epsilon architects continued their daily routines below, unaware of the drama unfolding in their skies. Concordat flagship is broadcasting, Lieutenant Rivera reported. They're demanding immediate communication. Chen straightened her uniform. Put them through. Visual mode, tactical overlay active. The holographic display materialized, revealing Supreme Commander Vexthor of the Concordat. His serpentine features twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. This is a protected Concordat development zone. Identify yourself. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Star Federation. Chen's voice was ice. Your presence here violates multiple provisions of the Non-Interference Treaty. The Epsilon system falls under human protection under the Guardian Protocol. Vexthor's auxiliary breathing membranes fluttered in amusement. Guardian Protocol. We've monitored this system for decades. These silicon primitives are barely atmospheric capable. They require guidance, like the guidance you provided to the Centauri Collective. Chen's words carried the weight of history. The Centauri, another young civilization, the Concordat had guided into extinction through resource exploitation. That won't happen here. You speak as if you have a choice, Admiral. Vexthor leaned forward. Our sensors detect no human ships in this system. Are you transmitting from a nearby star? Will you watch from afar as we help these primitives reach their potential? Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Concordat's arrogance had always been their weakness. Commander Zhang, disengage quantum camouflage. All ships, battle formations. The space around Epsilon lit up as 12 human warships shimmered into existence, their advanced stealth systems powering down. The TSS Artemis, a massive dreadnought nearly twice the size of its Concordat counterparts, took point position. Human ships had evolved far beyond the brute force designs of their early space age. They were works of art, their crystalline hulls housing technologies that bordered on magic by less advanced standards. Vexthor's expression shifted from amusement to concern. Impossible. Our sensors showed exactly what we wanted them to show. Chen finished. Humanity remembers being the primitive species, Commander. We learned. We adapted. We evolved. The tactical display highlighted the Concordat fleet's vulnerabilities. Their shields operating on predictable frequencies, their weapon systems following patterns that human AIs had long since decoded. The Epsilon Architect's quantum probability engines had given Chen's tactical team new insights into Concordat technology's weaknesses. This is your only warning, Chen continued. The Epsilon civilization will develop at their own pace, free from external interference. Any hostile action will be met with the full force of the Terran Star Federation. Vexthor's secondary eyes narrowed. You risk war over silicon-based primitives. Their technology is barely beyond fusion power. They're centuries from achieving anything meaningful. That's where you're wrong. Chen activated a secure data stream. Commander Patel, show them what we've learned. The tactical display shifted, showing the complex quantum calculations underlying the Architect's probability engines. They're not just building structures, Chen explained. They're reshaping local quantum fields, achieving effects our scientists are still trying to understand. Their potential is beyond anything we've seen. All ships, target locks acquired, Zhang reported quietly. The human fleet had maneuvered into optimal firing positions, while Chen kept Vexthor distracted. Each ship's crystalline hull hummed with contained power, ready to unleash weapons that operated on principles the Concordat hadn't even discovered yet. Vexthor studied the data, his expression unreadable. The Concordat were conquerors, but they weren't fools. They recognized when they were outmatched, not just in firepower but in technological sophistication. The Concordat Council will hear of this, he hissed finally. This system was meant to be ours. The time of claiming developing worlds is over, Chen replied. Humanity stands ready to protect any civilization that shows the same drive, the same potential we once had. We are no longer the primitives you once dismissed, Commander. We are the guardians you should have been. The Concordat ships began powering up their engines, preparing to retreat. But Chen knew this wasn't over. It was merely the first move in a longer game. The Concordat would return, perhaps with allies, perhaps with new weapons. But humanity would be ready. As the hostile fleet jumped to hyperspace, Chen turned to her crew. Begin deploying the quantum sensor network. I want early warning of any ships entering this system. And continue monitoring the Architects, but maintain our distance. They deserve the chance to reach the stars on their own terms. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their augmented abilities and advanced interfaces, allowing them to coordinate complex operations with minimal verbal communication. Humanity had come far from its early days of crude rocket fuel and radio waves. They had built something unprecedented, a civilization that remembered its roots, that used its power not to conquer, but to protect. Admiral, Patel called out, excitement in her voice. The quantum probability engines, they're showing new patterns. I think they're responding to our presence, not consciously, but on a quantum level. Chen smiled. Perhaps the Architects were more aware than anyone suspected. Sometimes the best guardians were the ones you never knew you had. Echoes of Earth. 3 days after the Concordat's retreat, Admiral Chen sat in her private quarters aboard the TSS Artemis, reviewing ancient historical records. The holographic display showed Earth as it had been centuries ago, a world of nations and borders, of primitive rockets and environmental crisis, a world that had nearly destroyed itself countless times before finally reaching for the stars. A gentle chime announced Commander Patel's arrival. Admiral, you need to see this. The display shifted to real-time footage from their quantum sensors. The Epsilon Architects had gathered in unprecedented numbers around their probability engines. The massive structures pulsed with new patterns of energy, reaching deeper into the quantum fabric of space-time than ever before. "They're aware of us," Paddle said quietly. "Not consciously, perhaps, but their quantum network, it's responding to our presence. The patterns match human brainwave frequencies." Chen leaned forward, studying the data, like calling to like across the quantum void. "Show me the historical comparison." Another window opened, displaying records from humanity's own first encounters with advanced civilizations. The fear, the uncertainty, the desperate race to catch up technologically. But there was something different here, something unique in how the architects were responding. "Admiral," Lieutenant Rivera's voice came through the comm. "Priority message from Earth Defense Command. The Concordat, they've released historical records about Earth." Chen's heart sank. She had known this was coming. The Concordat's revenge wouldn't be military, but informational. "Put it through." The message contained ancient stellar maps, surveillance records, and detailed reports. They showed Earth, over 5 centuries ago, being visited by advanced civilizations, including the Concordat. But instead of making contact, these civilizations had chosen to watch, to study, to let humanity struggle, and nearly destroy itself multiple times. "They're claiming we're hypocrites," Patel observed. "That we're doing exactly what was done to us, interfering with a developing species." Chen stood, moving to the window that overlooked the beautiful blue-green world below. "No, we're doing what should have been done for us. The architects may be silicon-based, may think in ways we can barely comprehend, but they're reaching for the same things we reached for. Understanding, growth, connection." A new alert flashed across their displays. The architect's quantum network was growing stronger, more coherent. Their probability engines were achieving effects that defied conventional physics. "They're accelerating," Patel breathed. "The presence of advanced technology in their system, our ships, our quantum sensors, it's catalyzing their development, not through direct interference, but through quantum resonance." Chen thought of Earth's long, lonely climb to the stars. How different might it have been if they'd had guardians instead of watchers, if they'd had proof they weren't alone in their journey. "Send a message to Earth Defense Command," she ordered. "The Guardian Protocol isn't just about protection. It's about redemption. We're not here to control or guide the architects. We're here to give them what we never had: hope." The quantum sensors registered a massive surge of energy from the planet's surface. One of the probability engines had achieved a new state of coherence, creating a stable quantum field that rippled through space-time. "Admiral," Rivera called urgently, "we're detecting Concordat communications, multiple fleets mobilizing. They're calling in allies, the hegemony, the Stellar Compact. They're citing our interference as a violation of galactic law." Chen smiled grimly. The Concordat had revealed humanity's past, not just to shame them, but to rally others against them, to paint them as upstart primitives who had forgotten their place. "They're wrong," she said quietly. "We haven't forgotten our past. We've learned from it. Humanity spent centuries looking up at the stars, wondering if we were alone, if anyone would help us survive our own growth. Now we have the chance to be what we wished for." She turned to her officers, seeing the same determination in their eyes. "Begin preparations for extended operations. If the Concordat wants to make this about Earth's history, let's show them how humanity has evolved, not just technologically, but ethically." The TSS Artemis quantum computers processed new tactical simulations, accounting for the possibility of facing multiple hostile fleets. But their greatest asset wasn't their advanced technology or superior firepower. It was their understanding of what it meant to be the ones looking up at the stars, dreaming of something more. "The architect's quantum network," Paddle reported. "It's forming new patterns, almost like it's trying to communicate." "Then let's make sure they have time to figure out how," Chen replied. Humanity's path to the stars was marked by violence and fear. The architects deserve better. They deserve what we never had: guardians who understand, who protect, who remember what it was like to be reaching for the impossible. As if in response to her words, the probability engines below pulsed with new energy, sending ripples through the quantum fabric of space itself. The architects were on the verge of something extraordinary, and humanity would ensure they had the chance to achieve it, no matter the cost. Dawn of Unity. Space around the Epsilon system blazed with energy as 3 separate fleets dropped out of hyperspace. The Concordat had returned, bringing with them the combined might of the Hegemony and the Stellar Compact. Over 60 warships took up attack positions, their weapons charged and shields at maximum. Admiral Chen stood resolute on the bridge of the TSS Artemis, watching as her tactical display tracked the overwhelming force arrayed against them. 12 human ships against 60. The odds seemed impossible. "They're broadcasting," Rivera announced. All 3 fleet commanders. The holographic display split into 3 sections, showing Vexthor of the Concordat, Marshal Clerics of the Hegemony, and High Commander Zena of the Stellar Compact. Chen noted how they positioned themselves. 3 predators circling wounded prey. "This is your final warning," Vexthor began, but Chen cut him off. "No," she said firmly. "This is yours. Look at your sensors. Really look." The enemy commanders paused, their expressions changing as new data streamed in. The Epsilon Architects' probability engines were operating at unprecedented levels, their quantum fields extending far beyond planetary orbit. The entire system had become a vast web of quantum connections. "Impossible," Marshal Clerics whispered. "Their development rate is extraordinary," Chen finished. "Not because of our interference, but because this is who they always were. We didn't give them technology or direct them. We simply gave them time." The tactical display shifted, showing the complex dance of quantum fields emanating from the planet. The architects had achieved something unprecedented, a civilization-wide quantum network that was beginning to affect the very fabric of space-time. "You're protecting them because they're powerful," High Commander Zena accused. "You want to control their advancement." Chen shook her head. "We're protecting them because we remember. Because every species deserves the chance to reach its potential without fear. Humanity spent centuries afraid of the dark between the stars. We won't let that happen to others." Suddenly, every sensor in the system lit up with alerts. The architect's quantum network had achieved a new state of coherence. Space itself seemed to ripple as their probability engines synchronized. "Admiral," Patel called out, excitement in her voice. "The quantum fields, they're not just communicating anymore. They're creating something." Between the opposing fleets, space began to distort. A new pattern emerged in the quantum fabric, a message written in the language of reality itself. Not in words or symbols, but in pure mathematical truth that every species' computers could interpret. "They know we're here," Chen said softly. "All of us. And they're reaching out." The message translated itself across every ship's systems. PC through understanding. Growth through cooperation. Strength through unity. "The architects," Paddle explained, her voice filled with wonder. "They've been watching us watching them. Learning from our quantum emissions, understanding not just our technology, but our intentions. They've achieved in days what might have taken them decades, not because we interfered, but because we showed them they weren't alone." The enemy fleet commanders exchanged uncertain looks. Their sensors showed their weapons would be useless against the quantum fields now permeating the system. The architects had transcended conventional warfare before it could touch them. "This is why we enacted the Guardian Protocol," Chen said, addressing all 3 commanders. "Not to control or exploit, but to preserve the moment when a species discovers its true potential. Humanity remembers being alone, being afraid. We chose to be better than those who came before us." She gestured to the magnificent display of quantum engineering surrounding them. "The architects have shown us another way. Not conquest, not subjugation, but true cooperation. They've achieved something none of our species managed alone. They found a way to communicate through the fundamental forces of reality itself. The quantum fields pulsed again, creating patterns of incredible beauty and complexity. The architects were inviting them all to learn, to grow, to understand. Vexthor was the first to power down his weapons. The Concordat withdraws its objection to human protection of this system. The other commanders followed suit, their fleets standing down one by one. They recognized something profound had occurred, the birth of a new kind of civilization, one that had skipped the long cycles of war and fear that had marked their own histories. Send word to Earth, Chen ordered. The Guardian Protocol was the right choice, not because it let us protect the architects, but because it let us become what we always should have been. Not conquerors, not exploiters, but witnesses to the incredible potential that exists in every developing civilization. As the enemy fleets prepared to depart, the architect's final message rippled through the quantum fields. Thank you for teaching OVRUS. Now, let us WATCHOV each other. Chen smiled, feeling the weight of centuries lift from humanity's shoulders. They had finally broken the cycle of fear and dominance that had haunted the galaxy for so long. The architects had shown them all a new path forward, one where the strong protected the developing, where knowledge was shared rather than hoarded, where the dreams of a silicon-based species could reshape the very nature of space and time. The TSS Artemis crew watched in awe as the probability engines created new patterns of quantum interaction, promising advances that would benefit all species. Humanity's role as guardians had led not to power over others, but to a profound new understanding of what civilization could become when given the chance to grow without fear. The dawn of a new era had arrived, born not from conquest or control, but from the simple choice to protect rather than exploit, to nurture rather than dominate. And in that choice, humanity had finally found its true place among the stars.